Welcome to Jurassic Park.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
No, I am your father.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Hello, I'm your host, Jim McLean. Welcome back to another episode of More Than Pixels on a Screen, a spoilerific movie review podcast brought to you by Banterflix, cinematic discussion with a Northern Irish accent. That's us, nay. Nay. And joining me on this week's episode is my lovely co-host, Adam What's Happening Neeson. Adam, how are you, good sir? We've just had Halloween. People have listened to our ramble. An hour and a half madness.
If you want some give my headpiece talk, go there. Won't be having it today, Jim. We're on important business.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I feel our childish inner selves will come out at some point, because we are talking about the Belfast Film Festival, which is running from the 31st of October to the 9th of November. It opened, as we record, last night with Aisling Clarke's Free Walker. I am pretty certain I'm saying that wrong, because you will hear an interview with my lovely self talking to the film's writer and director, Aisling Clarke, shortly, where she said more of like, I think it's Free Walker. Apologies, the token Protestant in the room. What can I say? The only Irish I know is Snuggleroo, and that's jellyfish. So that is the Irish language horror feature that opened this year's programme. We're going to be talking about that. I also have an interview with Paul Kennedy, the writer and director of Dead Man's Money, and that is screening on the 3rd of November at the QFT with a gala screening. We'll also be talking, I guess, a little bit about some of the other films within this year's programme. But I thought, Adam, as I went very high-pitched, we'd kick things off and just generally have a little bit of a chit-chat. A bit of a shit man. I tried to do an Uncle Andy and it failed horribly. What can I say? I'm recovering from the Dark Edges International Film Festival. It closed the same night as the Belfast Film Festival opened, and while the classier clientele of Belfast was sitting in a cinema watching Aisling Clarke's latest horror output, I was sitting in my suspenders in the barge doing the time warp yet again. As were you, Adam Neeson.
I was in my riffraff costume. Just shave my head specially.
Yeah, you've never looked better, son. But yes, that's us. So we're a bit like the Halloween pod. We're a little bit dishevelled this morning. I know I certainly am after 6 days of festival madness. But that's the Dark Edges. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the Belfast Film Festival. We're turning, as I say, from the 31st of October to the 9th of November. 24 premieres this year. The festival seems to get bigger and bigger in terms of its clout. A lot of international feet, like the likes of Night Bitch, I know, is screening rumours, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. Adam, generally for you, if I say to you Belfast Film Festival, what are the screenings, the memories? I was surprised before we started to record, because I thought as a short filmmaker, you may have submitted something to the programme, because the shorts is such a big part of Belfast Film Festival's programme. I fired all those questions at you. Run with them.
Shorts wise, I've always sort of been out of sync with Belfast Film Festival. I always seem to be in production while they're asking for something. So over the last few years, I haven't really been submitting. But next year, Jim, next year. But Belfast Film Festival, to me, it's not just about the big premieres. It is also about, networking and meeting local film fans, and having those conversations in the lobby that you don't really get on a regular screening. I do know that this year there is a lot of workshops and skill screen skill meetups and stuff, and that's a very important part, because most people think festivals are just you go see the movies and then you can tell people I seen that last October. It's not until fucking next year. But
not even get released. But I thought
I seen Lady Macbeth and your girl Florence Pugh was in it. Do you know her? but it is a very important thing, especially for Belfast. The Dark Hedges Film Festival or itself, clearly there's a want from Belfast audiences for movies. Um, and with the Belfast Film Festival this year, there's a lot of local stuff alongside the international stuff, and it's as
I'm
good
sure
of a
there's
quality
filmmakers going, I'm really delighted he's called my stuff. Stuff.
stuff. Well, the movies from here are as good as quality as the international.
Yeah, without a doubt. You can see that, and a big part of that, and helping that develop, I guess, with the Belfast Film Festival, is the NI Independence section. Because I know on the TV show a couple of weeks ago, we had the lovely Leo McGuigan on, and Leo's film Braxton, I'm nearly certain, screened at the festival as part of the NI Independence. The lovely Brian Mulholland, the man you just want to... Listeners, if you see Brian Mulholland just walking down the street singing do a diddy do a do diddy, well, I don't even know the words, but if you see him just walking around Belfast, just give him a hug. Just give him a hug, because the man is the Terry Hooley. I can't steal this phrase. It's Jim McMorrow, another filmmaker, just calls Brian Mulholland the Terry Hooley of the independent short section, with what he's done with Film Devar, another great festival. But I know Brian Mulholland's The Monday Club got its screening as part of the NI Independence. People might go look at that and go, oh, I'd rather go see Night Bitch, or I'd rather go see something which is a big international cast, and to say, oh, as you say, to see that 6 months before it's released. But the NI Independence, do not underestimate, dear listener, the importance for that as a platform for local filmmakers and allowing them to improve. I remember watching the first showcase, and I say this with love, they were not great in terms of the local stuff. I mean, now this is going back maybe 10 years, longer maybe. Apologies, and I don't include the likes of Leo's film, and I don't include Brian's film in that. The first year it was okay. There was nothing amazing. And then once you saw the likes of Good Vibrations, and you also, I guess, look at the legacy of Game of Thrones here and how it helped create the local platform for not just putting and improving talent in front of the camera, but behind the scenes, technically improving everything. A lot of the NI Independent stuff are, as you say, as good as the international stuff, Adam.
Yeah. And it is always good to see, like, hearing at the launch event, there's a lot of work goes into going around the world to get these projects to come to Belfast, and I think it is a Belfast way of thinking where it's like, nobody's going to want to come here. Why would somebody from America want to come to Belfast to talk about movies?
Hey, but you say that, Adam, but we've had the likes of John Cusack coming here in the past. So we've had some, what you would, I guess, call maybe A-listers in their day, but A-list talent. The likes of, I remember the excitement around John Cusack coming to Belfast. I remember it vividly. He was here. Now, he was here as a political activist, more as a filmmaker. But that was a special night at the Dublin Road Cinema, from memory, in there with the lovely Brian Henry Martin, and then they did a kind of a Q&A, an in-person event in I forget the name of the school, but it was a school in West Belfast. And yeah, don't underestimate the importance of that. And I know that Stephen Hackett, who is no longer with the film festival, he's moved on to pastures new. I had a great relationship with Stephen Hackett with the festival, and I remember him talking at one point that the likes of Susan Sarandon was very close to it was just a case of dates not aligning, but she was very keen to come to the festival. So yeah, I think you'd be surprised the amount of people that want to come to Belfast. We're a post-conflict country here in Northern Ireland. The arts is a very important aspect of healing the wounds that may never fully heal here, but at least can scab over. There's an image for you listeners. But the arts can play a massive role in helping heal a post-conflict society. And there will be a lot of interest in filmmakers who see film as art, but not as content. You know, my old, when you're not thinking about stuff as IPs, moneymaker, but if you think of cinema as art and as a way to get important messages across, there are filmmakers, there are actors, producers out there who will want to come here, without a doubt. People want to come here.
Because they also get to do the nice Game of Thrones tour.
They get to do the wee Toasties tour where they go round on the wee pedalo thing, and they also get a wee any celeb listening. Let me sell this to you now, right? Sell Belfast to you. Not only will you get to go on those pedalo things round the course with Maniac 2000 blaring out, just imagine Susan Sarandon, few drinks in her, just bopping about, but you also get a free Belfast bap.
Oh, and you get to pick your own flavour of Tato, whatever you want on it.
Whatever you want, you get to do it. And because Tato's going mental with flavour now, they're doing hot chocolate flavour popcorn. Come on, A, Tato, stick to crisps, and B, nobody wants hot chocolate flavoured popcorn. Although I've seen the likes of Gav Logan and a few other people when I put a post up going, actually, it's quite nice. Nah, popcorn, salted or sweet. And if you want to be risque, mix them all in with a wee bag of Maltesers and just have yourself a wee party.
The Tato popcorn, the sweet Tato popcorn, is a go-to for the Neeson household. I'll tell you that. It doesn't get stuck in your teeth. Put that in the bag.
I like to think that in the Neeson household, if there's one last wee bag of it, you fight over it.
Oh no, you want to be getting a pound bag. You know what I mean? Not the wee small jammies.
Yeah, you're fighting over it like feral cats. But anyway, I digress. This is what we normally do. Yeah, A-list talent wants to come here. I always remember Stephen Hackett. I was sitting in the office talking with him many years ago. I think it was pre-pandemic. And we were talking about, because we've done stuff for the Belfast Film Festival in the past. We did the screening of Piranha on HMS Caroline, which was a fab night. And it was something I pitched to Stephen almost jokingly. Do you have any memories, any particular screenings that come to mind for you, Adam? I've a few. The special events, the Belfast Film Festival. I know they do less of them now. The kind of not out there events, but like the Warriors, screening of the Warriors under the underpass, doing Close Encounters of the Third Kind on Black's Mountain is one I still think was just a great idea. Off to name a few off the top of my head. Those are kind of special events. Other films I know I've seen at the Belfast Film Festival. But what about you?
Like I said, I seen Lady Macbeth at the Belfast Film Festival in 2017. And was blown away by that. Blown away by Florence Pugh, like a very early in her career, Florence Pugh. And then there's a couple of things I've seen. I think Mindhorn. That was a good movie as a big Mighty Bush fan.
I remember interviewing the director and star of that when they were here, and they were just exactly as they are on screen as they are off screen. Madness.
Two silly boys.
Two silly boys, which is what you want.
Oh,
those silly boys went on to do Ghost Stories, which I absolutely love.
Oh yeah. And then Daniel Blake with Ken Loach, who came over, and that was a great screening. That was one of those movies that going in, I didn't really know what to expect, and I was just blown away by the power of it.
You're always getting blown away in these screenings, Adam. You need to stop sitting on these explosive seats. You need to stop sitting on the explosive seats. But yeah, as I said, there's films I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The one actually that comes to mind, because we've stayed in touch since I did an interview, was Issa Lopez with Tigers Are Not Afraid. Now I know that's not a local production. That was a film I knew very little about. Didn't know anything about the director. And Stephen Hackett again. We were talking, and Stephen, we were just kind of in the Genesis era of, not the band, but the Genesis era for the Dark Ages. We still had the Dark Ages Movie Club, and we were doing, I think, just a Belfast Film Festival special podcast, a bit like we are now. And Stephen suggested you might want to interview this filmmaker, Issa Lopez. Very talented, and it was amazing. it was an absolute. I mean, I love Tigers Not Afraid. I know it's available now on Shudder. I know Issa has went on. She was involved in the most recent series of True Detective. I believe she's coming back for the next season,
She
which
is, yeah.
it, which is I think a first. Is that for True Detective? Because usually it's a different showrunner.
Hmm.
So yeah, I thought she did a fab. I thought that was a fab film, and it's still not just one of my favorite events at the Belfast Film Festival. Just when a film you don't know anything about, you sit down and you go, I absolutely love this. But then to sit down and get the opportunity to speak with a filmmaker at a time, I've said this before, and I'm not making it all about me, but when I genuinely was like, oh, am I actually any good at this? I hear a lot of listeners going, no. But am I actually good at this? Am I actually good at interviewing and sitting down and talking to people about their film and getting what I want out of them? And it was a lovely interview. I thought I was going to get about 15 minutes. I think Issa and I talked for nearly 45 minutes. The interview, the edited interview, is somewhere within the Banterflix ranks. But yeah, but also then I've dodged a bullet enough. People were tired of me talking about this, but Good Vibrations, the Terry Hooley biopic. I love that film. I genuinely love that film, and just the excitement about that night. There was the two screenings. There was a screen at the Dublin Road. There was a screening at the Ulster Hall. I was at the Ulster Hall, where it was just semi-madness with Terry there, kind of being full Terry Hooley. But it was just, for me, it was a real kind of moment for the Belfast Film Festival. And since then, you've really seen it. I was coming back to what we said, showcasing and supporting local talent and giving them a big gala platform to really launch their work. I think on that note, we shall move on to this year's programme and talk about that specifically. So last night, as we record, was the opening night, and the opening film was Aisling Clarke's second directorial offering, Free Walker, or Frey Walker, I think, if I'm getting that right. And earlier in the week, I got a chance to speak to Aisling just before the film's premiere.
We hope quit go.
Nugan dinner ve corridor. Shine pointe.
So that's a clip of Frey Walker, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the film's director, Aisling Clarke. Aisling, you're getting ready for the opening night of the Belfast Film Festival, screening in Belfast on Halloween. As a filmmaker with a love of horror, you can't get much better than that on a Halloween night itself.
Well, it's definitely very nice to have the Irish premiere at the Belfast Film Festival. Bringing Frewica home on Halloween is pretty ideal, yeah.
So this is your second feature following up from The Devil's Doorway, if I'm getting the years right.
Yep.
2018 found footage horror feature. How did this end up being your follow-up to that project? I know you've worked on some shorts like the likes of Even Childer, I'm a massive fan of as well, but how did this end up being your follow-up to The Devil's Doorway?
I think if you're working independent film, which so far that's what I've done, you're always spinning a whole bunch of plates, you know. So nobody's ever the idea of working on one thing at a time is like such a luxury. You do that if you're David Lynch, maybe, But for the rest of us, we're working on a number of things all the time, and you never know which one is going to fly first because getting financing for independent film is so complicated. So it was the luck of the draw. It could have been something else. There was another couple of different projects that got very close at various times, and then one thing would it's independent film. The financing is like a house of cards. If one thing doesn't come together, then the whole thing falls. So it's always about just the luck of the draw.
Those plates are still spinning.
Always, like I always have a ton of stuff on the go all the time. So I had written there's an Irish language film called Dinnan that came out in I want to say 2021 for Damien McCann to direct. And it was kind of on the back of that the conversation started about doing an Irish language horror film with the producer of that film, Dermot Lavery from Double Band. That's where Frauke originated.
There's a couple of things I want to jump on there. Talk us through, as much, I guess, at this stage, how much do you want our viewers here in Belfast, even further afield, when the film does get general release next year, how much do you want them to know going in about the film?
I think it's always good to know as little as possible going in to see a film, really. Like some of the best experiences I've had going to see films have been having absolutely no clue whatsoever what's going on. But I understand that people tend to want a little bit more. I mean, we know that it's a horror film. Um, it's it's a folk horror film, but when I say that, I think it's kind of inevitable if you're going to make a horror film in Ireland that it's going to be folky to some extent. I feel like folk horror is our second language here, it's just very natural. I don't think you need to know much more than that really to go in it. It's in Irish language, of course, but I mean, there's such a strong history of foreign language, non-English language horror. I mean, Suspiria, all that K horror we've had, J horror, Argento in general, Bava, all that. That I think horror audiences in particular don't mind if it's not in English. So that hasn't been a barrier so far yet, anyway.
No, I think is it I forget the name of the director, the inch high barrier of foreign cinema that we talk about. I mean that most cinema goers will look beyond that. But on that point, where was the decision? I know you've kind of touched on that a little bit. To shoot this as an Irish language feature. Where did the kind of genesis of that come from? I know you've touched on that a little bit, but if you could expand upon it.
Yeah, so after Dinnan, which was on BBC in 2001, after that was all done and dusted. Dermot, the producer of that film, just said to me, there's this. So Frauke was financed for the most part, not completely, for the most part by TG Carr's City Car scheme, which is also the pot of money that made The Quiet Girl and Aract a couple of years ago. So he wanted to target that. And that's where it started. And I didn't instantly, I need to think about it, because if you're going to make a horror film in the Irish language, I felt like it had to be the story would come out of that somehow. It had to have a reason for it to be in Irish and not just take something I had sitting around and translate it. So that's how it started, and then the film as it evolved, the story as it evolved. It's kind of my very subjective personal lens on like Irishness, on Ireland, which I think is a place that's so full of trauma, generational trauma, historical trauma, social trauma, that it's an easy place to set horror. It's actually incredible that it's only in the past few years that we've started to have a lot of Irish horror on the world stage. So that's where it started, and yeah, it came out of that.
We need more. We need more Irish filmmakers. There is a glut, as you say. I mean, we've just done our own showcase for our own Dark Edges International Film Festival, and it's great to see on the short format of cinema, seeing so many filmmakers, and for this year, for us in particular, so many female filmmakers as well. I have to say, I was really delighted with that on that front. But that's enough of me shamelessly plugging my stuff. We're here to talk about your project. So talk me through, what's your memories of filming this? How long was the pre-production? Independent cinema, it's not often a luxury. Did you have time, rehearsals with cast and crew? How long was the shoot overall? Loads of questions I just fired at you.
The shoot was like 20 days, 21 days maybe. So it was super quick. It was very intense, very contracted. The pre-production phase, I'm trying to remember, might have been like a month, 4 weeks, I think. And certainly wasn't more than that. And then the development phase, I mean, it was several years, but that is several years where you're working on, you do a draft, you put it, you send it off, and you work on something else for 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, so it's not focused on the one project. Um, yeah, it was once it got going, once we got like, finally, because there's various things to do with casting and crew and all that. Once we had all the elements in line that we could go ahead, it was 4 weeks pre-production, 21-day shoot. Bam, that was that.
Tight turnaround as always, I guess. Long days on shoot. What did you learn? And I always ask this question. So your first feature, as we say, Devil's Doorway, found footage feature. This is different, but still there's, as you've mentioned, kind of Irish folklore, kind of very much set here in Ireland. What did you take from that project? I know it's the kind of the token, not the token, but the kind of loaded question. What did you take from that project that you then brought to this for your second feature?
My first one. Um, yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think they're extremely different projects, and um, the similarities that they do have are probably more kind of thematic, or and not necessarily things that I would even recognize consciously as something that I'm interested in until I see it and go, oh yeah, So both films have essentially at their heart, they have an intergenerational platonic love story. So Devil's Doorway, Father Thomas and Father John, a young priest and an old priest, the classic setup. And they have like a lovely warm relationship, friendship. And Frauke has a very similar thing with Bríd Ní and Claire Monley, the two characters. So for me, nobody's ever commented on that, but for me, that became striking at some point. Then in terms of what else you bring from it, it's just, as I say, very different projects, but you learn from every shoot that you do. And these are very, very different shoots too, completely different shooting style and all that. Because found footage, of course, is its own thing entirely.
Mm.
But I mean, I don't think there's anything that I could point to in specific and say, oh, that, it's you just take each project as it is, and they're all their own thing completely. So, but yeah, you learn from everything.
And as we've mentioned, it's opening the Belfast Film Festival on, of course, Halloween night. So, what's been your relationship with the Belfast Film Festival, and to have it opening this year's program? I know the film has screened across the globe, and I've read glowing reviews. I think I was reading just before we started to record. Variety have a lovely review piece on the film. But what's it like then to bring it home here to Belfast on Halloween night to a local audience?
Well, I mean, this is the city where I cut my teeth as a filmmaker. This is the city where I've lived for 20 years, came here as a student thinking that I would be a teacher, maybe something sensible, and fell in love with a film module, elective module that I took, eventually changed to film totally, dove in and was working in the QFT on the evenings and the weekends. And, this is the film that totally, after a lifetime of loving film in a more casual way, this was the city where I fell properly into it. So bringing it home here is really meaningful to me, and it is the place that I would call home for this film, and for me as a filmmaker. So yeah, that means a lot.
Fantastic. Aisling, it has been great. I know you are very busy in the run up to the opening night, so thank you very much for taking the time to chat to us. Thank you.
Nice talking to you, James.
So that's my interview with Aisling Clarke. As I say, we'll probably in a future pod we'll discuss the film more in depth. Another film that's screening at the QFT on the 3rd of November is Paul Kennedy's feature, Dead Man's Money. Paul following up his 2013 feature made in Belfast starring Kieran McKennahan. I had the pleasure many years ago of hosting a Q&A with both of them, and that was a lot of fun at the QFT. They did a little mini showcase of films made not just in Belfast but specifically Northern Ireland, because remember Battle of the Bone I think was included within that gala, but here, as I say, that screening, and we also, thanks to the festival, were able to catch up and speak with Paul about the film.
It's not about money anymore, young Henry. This is about a good body being taken advantage of by someone who has form in this particular area.
You're awful good, young Henry.
So that's a look at the trailer for Dead Man's Money. It's going to be screening at the Belfast Film Festival at the QFT on Sunday the 3rd of November, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the film's writer and director, Paul Kennedy. Paul, hello to you.
Hello, good to see you again.
Great to see you, Paul. It's been a while since we last chatted. I think, was it 2013, made in Belfast?
That sounds about right. Yeah, that was. I haven't directed anything. I haven't directed any features since then. So yeah, that sounds about right. What a blast from the past. Long time ago, eh?
That it does feel, because we were just saying before I started to record, we did a Q&A. I think it was shortly after the film's premiere at the Belfast Film Festival. We did a Q&A. I think it was a showcase of Northern Irish features. And I'm a big fan of Made in Belfast, and I've told you that before. And I've literally, I was sent the screener. I've literally just finished watching your latest feature, Dead Man's Money. And as I say, I want to compress it. There's a lot of Shakespeare in there. I think that's deliberate. There's a nod from the start. But do you want to tell our listeners and our viewers as much as you want them to know going in to your latest feature?
Yeah, that's a good one, because you kind of don't want them to know too much. You don't want to give away too much of the story. Basically, we've got a fella called Young Henry, and he's a barman stroke farmhand, and him and his wife Pauline run the local bar for young Henry's uncle, Old Henry. And he's working the farm and he's working the bar on the understanding that one day when Old Henry dies, his little empire will all come to young Henry and he'll inherit everything. But then Pauline, his wife, talks to someone in the village, and there's a rumor going around that Old Henry's dying. And there's no will. So Pauline wants it all written into the will. And she wants it all there in black and white, so they all know and they have the peace of mind that they're going to be taken care of when Old Henry dies. But young Henry doesn't want to have that conversation, because people in Ireland don't talk about big things like that. It's unwritten. You kind of just let it sit. You know, it's an understanding that.
And there is a line in the film as well where you talk about, not even just we don't talk about death, but men. Well, we don't talk about our feelings and things like that, but we don't talk about a death. It is, it's a very good point that you raised. We don't talk about death. Apologies, I cut across you.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right. Yeah, so we don't have those big conversations. We don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about death. And we don't, it's a conversation that we should have, but we don't. And that's why there's so many families that fall into a state of chassis, because they don't have these conversations. And then whenever somebody dies, all these cousins come out of the woodwork looking for a piece of inheritance, or one thing I did here recently was when somebody thought they were reaching old age, they gave away a chunk of their inheritance to the Catholic Church. They were trying to buy their way into heaven, So like, there's all these kind of things. So Pauline's very pragmatic, and she's like, this should be our bar, that should be our farm. Just get it written, and then we'll all be okay. But of course, Henry doesn't want to have the conversation. So there's events conspire from then on. Someone comes in and does indeed threaten their inheritance, and somebody tries to worm their way into Old Henry's life. And Pauline and young Henry decide that they have to take matters into their own hands and do something drastic to make sure that this person never gets their hands on Old Henry's inheritance.
And as we alluded, there's overtures, there's the use of the framing of the tragedy of Macbeth. And you've mentioned Pauline. I'm going to get it. Judith Roddy is playing Pauline. I just want to say, because I've literally just watched the film, she is fantastic. Everyone's fantastic. I mean, you're reteaming again with Kieran McKennigan, who you previously worked with on Made in Belfast. Impressive ensemble all round, but just that's the actor from just literally going from my TV screen to here to the little, what I call a studio, to watch the film. Very impressed. I like this. It's very different from Made in Belfast. You've hinted at, or you've mentioned that 2013 to this, and dare I ask, is there a reason? Because I know, and I use this point ad nauseum, Simon Brew talks about this. It's a miracle that any movie gets made, and I always bring it up on these interviews, because it is. Films, it's hard to get films across the finishing line. So for you, 2013 was the previous feature. You've done some shorts, as you've alluded to. Has there been a reason for that long period between the two?
I guess there's probably not the drive in me to direct as much as there would be with other directors. I'm involved in the filmmaking world in many different ways. I write, I direct, I act, but I also produce. So if I'm very happy producing. I think I've produced 4 or 5 movies now in that interim time from Made in Belfast to now. I'm just about to produce another one. So yeah, I think that's been keeping me busy. I'm not one of these directors who has to go, this is my next project and I have to direct and it has to be next year. I think if you're like that as a director, you're kind of setting yourself up for a bit of a heartbreak. I kind of just take things as they come, and then the opportunity to make Dead Man's Money as writer director came along, and I thought the time's right. If I can put the right cast together, if I can do this in the way that I really want to do it, which is keeping it really compressed, finding one perfect location, getting the right cast. So I mean, the first person I called was McManaman, and I was like, "What do you think of the character of young Henry?" And he was like, "Yeah." If Kieran had said it's not for me, then I don't think I would have made the movie. I just don't know who else I would have made it with.
He's your De Niro. That's the way you're working it. You're the Scorsese to his De Niro.
Yeah, don't tell him that. In fact, don't tell anybody that. It'll make us sound pretentious.
If anyone's listening, do not tell Kieran that we mentioned this. Do not mention this at all. But no, you've a good working relationship.
He's not only, we don't only have that working relationship, we're great friends as well. So we have a great shorthand where we can talk to each other, very quickly about things, and we can come to decisions on the characters very, very quickly. Because there's no dancing around the words, as Pat Short's character says. We've been, after we made in Belfast, we remained friendly for ever since. And we've just spent 2 weeks in America with the movie and traveling around and sharing an Airbnb in LA and having a lot of fun. And we're a lot older now than we were when we did Made in Belfast. We're very different people. So it's been fun to have that relationship as a friend, but also as a director and an actor. I think he is a really cerebral actor. I think he's very underrated, and I think he's very underused. I think when he's given the right role, and I think that young Henry is. I was very biased whenever we made in Belfast, because I thought at the time that Made in Belfast was one of his best roles and some of his best work. And it's very pretentious of me to say that because it's my work too, but I genuinely did feel that. Like, I've seen him in a lot of stuff. I remember seeing him in a very small indie movie called 100 Mornings, which is about sort of post-apocalyptic Ireland. And I just thought his performance was really brilliant and understated, and he was very well directed in that. So I think if he's given the right roles and if he's given the right opportunities, he's still got a lot of very interesting work ahead of him. I really love working with him. I love working with all the cast on this. Like Judith, who played Pauline, I worked with her as an actor on a couple of things, or on something a few years ago. I just always kept her in mind. And she came to set and she just smashed it. Like, she has a natural Derry accent, but she came and she kind of like modeled her accent on my natural North Antrim accent, and she really leaned into the Ulster Scotsness of the whole thing. Kathy Keir Clark, I've known for years, and she just came in and just smashed it as the Widow Tweed. Like, when I wrote the script, I always saw the Widow Tweed as some sort of little innocent old lady in her 80s, kind of. And then, you know, when we were casting, we were like, what if we just went completely against that and we cast someone like someone really, you know, glamorous, and someone like, and then we thought, what about Kathy? And then that just brought a whole new dimension to the character. And then Jared Jordan, who plays Jerry the Wheels, I've known Jared for 20 something years. He's, you know, I talk about underrated, underused actors. He's so good. I think this is the third movie he's done with Village Films. He did a couple of scenes in the Glenarma tapes for us, and he was really great in a movie we made called Night Ride, which we made during the pandemic, which is on Netflix. So this is the third movie he's made with us, and he's just effortlessly brilliant at being a bad guy, which is really strange because he's one of the nicest, funniest, most charming men that you can meet in real life. But then you just press record on a camera and he turns into a mean son of a bitch. And then Pat Short, like, what a legend. Like, to get the chance to work with Pat, and like, honestly, we had no idea who to cast in that role. We just didn't know who would do it. We didn't know who was out there, and we thought of a few actors, and we thought, yeah, we don't know. And then that was the last piece of the puzzle. And by this stage, some agents in London had the script, and there was a little bit of buzz about the script, and people were saying this is a really good script, a real actor's piece. And then Pat Short's agent said, what about Pat for this, for the role of Old Henry? And I was like, really, Pat? Like, yeah, like, would he do it? And they were like, yeah, he really likes the script. Let's talk. And I've loved, like, I think Pat Short, everybody knows him for his comedy chops. He's a funny, funny man. He's hilarious. But I remember watching him in Lenny Abrahamson's garage years ago and going, oh, this guy's the real deal. Like, yes, he can do the funny, but this is a serious, serious dramatic actor here who can convey so much in just one look. And, you know, that's the kind of actor you're dealing with. And then he turned up the set and he just, you know, he was everything we wanted him to be. He was so personable and lovely and charming and funny, and just nailed the character. You know, he just brought so much to the character, brought so much. There's a scene where young Henry kind of unloads on him, and basically tries to give him some home truths, and basically say that this lady isn't with you for your good looks and your charm. She's with you for your money, you daft man. And you can just see the man's heartbreak when he's taking this in, you know. And there's also another layer to what he's hearing, because he knows that what he's hearing is not true. But it's played so perfectly. So it was such a pleasure to have all these actors on set and work with them in that way, and work this text with them. And I wasn't precious about the text, even though I had written the whole thing. You know, I was very conscious that this was a big ask of these actors, and I was like, I'm not expecting you guys to show up knowing every line dead letter perfect. As long as we get the gist across, as long as we get the gist of the scene and the intention of the scene, and as long as you have fun playing it, that's all I'm interested in.
It is a real actor's piece, as you say, and there's plenty for actors to get their teeth into with the dialogue. I just wanted to. There's loads of things that I do want to ask, and I know that we're tight for time, etc. Because as much as you love chatting to me, I'm sure there's other things you'd love to be doing just days before the Belfast Film Festival. But we've mentioned kind of the overtures of Macbeth and using plot devices within that Shakespearean play here. Where was the genesis of the idea for that?
I've always loved that play. I was lucky enough to be in a production of that play many, many moons ago. And there's so many lines. It's so rich. The text is so rich. First of all, I should probably say to anybody listening, it's not Shakespearean. Like, it's not like. No. Do you remember when there was a movie that came out a few years ago called Lady Macbeth with Florence Pugh in it? And there's a very famous tweet put out. There was a cinema in, I think it was in LA. And it's had the writing outside the cinema, and it said, like, 8 p.m. tonight, Lady Macbeth, and it said underneath it, don't worry, it's not Shakespeare, they speak good. And I'm like, I think I should do the same disclaimer for this movie. They speak good, well, kind of. They speak a little bit Ulster Scotsy and a little bit Antrim, but it's you'll be able to understand them. Um, but there's so much in the Scottish play that I love. Uh, so I just thought that it was this is kind of a riff on Macbeth,
Mm.
and I didn't realize until about halfway through the writing of it, where I was like, oh, she's very Lady Macbethy. And I thought, okay, well, why not lean into this? So I did lean into it. It's different structurally because in the Scottish play in Act One, Macbeth is given his prophecy by the witches. You're going to be the Thane Clans, Thane Cawdor, or you're going to be the king. And then this prophecy reaches Lady Macbeth's ears, and she's like, well, we need to act on this, and we need to do it now. And the only way we're going to do this is if you kill the king and then you assume the throne. And then that's pretty much the inciting incident for the whole drama. Whereas in Dead Man's Money, we have I feel a more organic way of getting to that point where Lady Macbeth isn't Pauline in our movie. She isn't as murderous as instantaneously as in the play. It starts off kind of innocently where she wants a will, and she wants something in writing. She doesn't get what she wants, and then she starts to fear that she's not going to get what she wants, and then there is a very real threat to that, and that's a threat to her existence. She's worked all her life for something that she thinks is coming to her, and then that's kind of taken away from her, so she has to fight. She makes a very wrong decision, and she talks her husband into doing something nefarious. But and that doesn't happen until you can pretty much set your watch by it. That's pretty much the midpoint of the movie. Whereas in the play, it's the opening the opening act. But we always kind of the structure of Lady Macbeth's arc in the play is she can't deal with what she's done. She's spurred her husband into doing something really wrong, and she assumes the guilt and she assumes the blame, and she can't deal with it. And that's the same for Pauline's character in this. She's the driving force behind this big event that takes place, and once that big event takes place, she can't handle it. She can't deal with what's been done, and she tries her best to try to make up for it, but there's no coming back from what she's done. So if we stick to the confines of the play and of the character arc that way, I think it makes for rich drama, because young Henry's arc is kind of the opposite. When we entered the world of Dead Man's Money, he's kind of like one of the cows in the field that we see him feeding in the morning. He's just a big, docile, brutish beast who's happy with his lot in life. He gets up early in the morning. He goes to the farm. When he's finished on the farm, he goes to the bar. He does a shift in the bar. He has a few whiskeys. He shoots the shit with the locals. Then he goes to bed. He gets 3 or 4 hours sleep, and he gets up and rinse and repeat. And he's happy enough with his lot in life, and he knows that one day all of that will be his when old Henry pops his clogs. But then Pauline gets in his head and gets him to question his contentedness in his position, and he becomes involved in something that he shouldn't have got involved in. He should have just went to old Henry at the start of the movie and said, "Listen, is all this coming to me? Would you mind putting it in writing?" But we don't talk about those big things. Yeah. And if we did talk about those big things, there would be no drama. And if there was no drama, there would be no film. So
that is true. And I mean, I don't want to go into spoiler territory because the film is just about to screen at the Belfast Film Festival. But just what you're talking to, it comes pretty much full circle by the time the film reaches its climax. Yeah, as I say, really impressed by this. And as we say, it's screening at the Belfast Film Festival. How important of a platform you've previously I think Made in Belfast got its world premiere at Belfast. Now I think if I've picked you up right, this feature has screened elsewhere and it's bringing it home now. So how important is that to be able to showcase your latest feature? It's been a long time coming, but as you say, you've been producing, but to be able to screen it and showcase at this gala event at the QFT,
it's hugely important. Not only for me, but it's hugely important for local filmmakers that we have this platform. I'm not just saying this because I'm from here and because I go to the Belfast Festival and because we've had a lot of stuff in it over the years. It is genuinely one of the best film festivals in the world. It really consistently every year punches above its weight in terms of its programming, its special events, its attendance, and its engagement with local audiences. It's really important, and it's film lovers that go to everything. So it's when we had Made in Belfast, that was the opening film for Belfast Film Festival, and this was a huge thing for us back then, and over the years we've been able to have, we've premiered Mandrake at the Belfast Film Festival, which was great, and we premiered Tony Devlin's Glenarma tapes at the Belfast Film Festival, and we won the audience award there, which is huge, and that kind of goes towards getting us an international sale for the film. We can say we've got this social proof, if you like, that people have seen the movie and they've responded to it positively. Um, it's important for me personally because this is my home city. This is my home film festival. I feel like I'm a part of it every year because I always seem to have something in it. And if I don't have something in it, I turn up to everything that's on in it. And I love the festival. Have done for a very long time. But it's really important for me to show something. And I'm chuffed that this is going to be in the QFT because the QFT really responded to Made in Belfast back then. And, they actually did like a little small theatrical release for us, and they ran it for a few nights, which is, we didn't ask them to do that. They were just like, this is a really popular movie. It sells out every time we show it, and we'd like to run it for a few nights. The humor and the language in the movie is so sort of particular to us here in Northern Ireland that I feel like it needs to be seen in a communal environment of film lovers and filmmakers, and so I think that people are, when they watch it, they're going to get a lot out of it. We premiered in Galway earlier this year, and the audience really loved it. Like, I'm not just saying this, I haven't seen an audience laugh like that since Team America in a cinema.
That's a reference. That's a reference.
Right. So like, and it was a thing on set when I would laugh during takes and Kieran would turn to me and go, "You're the only person who finds this movie funny." And then in Galway, when everybody was laughing, I turned to Kieran and I was like, "Oh yeah, am I the only person that finds it funny now?" Yeah. So audiences in Galway really got it. And then we brought it up to Donegal at the Disappear Here Film Festival, and they really got it. And then we brought it to Los Angeles last week, and they really got it. The common theme seems to be that everybody really laughs in the right places. It's really dark humor, but then there's also sort of horror aspects to it that kind of sit underneath the surface as well that people really respond to. So yeah, to go back to your point about Belfast Film Festival, it is genuinely really important to me personally and professionally. I think it's a great festival, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of it again.
Fantastic, Paul. Well, as I say, I've just watched the film. I really enjoyed it. I like the QFT. As you know, we spoke before. I'm a big fan and will happily champion ad nauseum Made in Belfast. It was an absolute pleasure to chat to you again. Hopefully our paths shall cross. Hopefully it'll not be another 10 or so years before the next feature. I will be a lot older then, Paul, but I look forward to chatting to you again. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So that's my chat with Paul Kennedy. Adam, you and I have both seen this. I really like this film, and I know I come into it probably with a certain sense of I like the filmmaker. We're not friends. I really liked Made in Belfast. It took me by surprise. It was the year after Good Vibrations. There was people at the time who were a bit piffy about it in the sense like it's a bit fluffy. It's a rom-com, not a rom-com, but it's a romantic comedy that deals in the background, I guess, with issues left over from the Troubles. And I don't know, I mean, have you seen Made in Belfast all those years ago?
No, I remember it being screened at the Belfast Film Festival, but I haven't actually got around to watching it. It is one of those, I know it's terrible to say, being a filmmaker from Belfast, but whenever you hear of a movie that has Belfast in the title, Belfast Story, you sort of go, well, sure, I know what it'll be about. It'll be the Troubles, and it'll be people saying, you know yourself, and all right, we lads. So you kind of not stay away from them, but you've kind of be like, oh well, I'll get to it when I get to it. I would like to see it now that I have seen Dead Man's Money. And I didn't even know it was Paul Kennedy that directed it. I don't know Paul personally, but I've met him a few times. And he is truly a lovely fella. And we'll get into Man's Money, but he's not only a great filmmaker with a great vision, but he's clearly a great screenwriter as
An
well.
actor as well. Actor as
Yeah.
well, because he's in House of the Dragon. I completely, we were talking about in the interview there, I was kind of saying, why has it been so long since your first film, since this? And I know he kind of says he's a producer and likes, I mean, filmmaking's just one strand of that. But I was like, I didn't even mention the fact, well, you've been busy acting as well, son. Brilliant actor, and I'm sitting here, right, putting my cards on the table. I like both films, and I think in Made in Belfast it was, I think, Shauna MacDonald, I think from the Descent fame, is in there, and yeah, it was just a really solid, well-made film that I always talk about it ad nauseum. Wears its heart on its sleeve, unashamedly. So yeah, I enjoyed Made in Belfast, and I'm equally delighted to say that I really liked Dead Man's Money. That's enough of me rambling. Adam, your thoughts?
Dead Man's Money, going in, and knew nothing about it. And as soon as it sort of opened with the main character shoveling shade, I was like, oh no, is this going to be another film about a farmer? But thankfully it wasn't. It's, you know, it's a great character piece and very Macbeth inspired. Where, like I say, he's a great screenwriter, and this is a movie that's sort of set mainly in one location, and it takes both the screenwriting and the great acting of the crew, the cast, um, because here it really is just back and forth dialogue for an hour and a half, and that's a hard balance to, it's a tightrope act, especially when it is like a Northern Irish film, because you could have too many colloquialisms, you could have it be too broad, you can make it feel like people from here write to um, be more appealing to people around the world, so you don't really get a true feeling of what local conversations are like. But I think this film nails it, nails the sort of um, like generational sort of approach we have to each other in this country when it comes to look, my grandmother passed away during uh, the summer there, and a lot of the conversations with the family since then have been, so we're going down to solicitors to sort out our money. You're like, okay. And that seems to be growing up when people died. That's all I ever heard. Um, but this is great. I think Pat Short,
Yes,
Pat Short.
Pat Short.
I think Pat Short in this is fantastic for a guy that I mainly know for doing comedy, coming here and doing like drama. Towards the end, when he's giving a speech about one of the characters, I was like, oh shit, like this is proper emotional stuff. I wasn't expecting to get emotional watching this. Um, but yeah, great movie. I think definitely catch it at the festival. I would love to see it with an audience because I think the twists of drama would really shock people, and the amount of humor that's in the film will be great.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. All the performances. Pat Short, I thought, was fab. We kind of touched on this in the interview because I was trying to do it as unspoilerifically as I can because a lot of audiences here will not have seen the film yet. But that sequence just between Keir McKennahan and Pat Short, and it's this idea, and it's constantly brought up. We don't talk about death. We don't talk about our feelings, particularly men, and it all comes full circle, and it's just like you, it hit me probably in a way I didn't expect it to hit, in that sense. I didn't expect that type of reaction from this film. I'll be honest, when I went in, when I seen the name, before seeing the director, I went, oh, is this another like Dead Man's Shoes type of film? Another kind of legacy like that? And there is references to the Troubles, or not the Troubles. There's reference to the past in this in passing, but it's enough. It's I like filmmakers are now having the confidence. They don't have to really sit there and stop the film and go, he's in the IRA, you know, he was in the UVF, you know. We've moved on from that. We talk about these people. I think it's is it Jerry the Wheels, in that sense that you don't really get bogged down, but I guess you get an understanding of his background. But for me, the standout, and I said this in the interview because I'd literally just finished watching the film and then sat to do the interview over Zoom, is Judith Roddy as Pauline, as Kieran Mahonan's young Henry. Because I love the humour. It's like there's young Henry and there's old Henry. And I come from kind of County Tyrone, rural background where the kind of nicknames and stuff, they stick. Like there's, God rest him, our next door neighbour was Tom Jones, the man from Cavan. Not the Tom Jones, but he was Tom Jones, the man from Cavan. He had lived in that house for over 60, 70 years and reared families who've now got their own families, but he was still the blow-in from Cavan. My mum and dad are still the blow-ins from Belfast. My mum and dad, before my dad passed a couple of years ago, but they lived at that house for over 40 years, but they're still known. The Ayus are the ones, city folk. So that's the localisms that I kind of like. There's a joke in there about I'm trying to the best way to word this, but from the LGBTQ plus community, and it's like, well, we don't call him that nickname anymore. I can't remember the name. I think it's just James. I can't remember. I think it's just James. We don't call him James the Poof anymore. He's just James, and it's funny. It's authentically to hear, but that humour will travel. Dark humour, I always feel travels. I always feel dark humour travels well. But then, as I say, we have Judith Roddy playing Pauline, and the film opens with a quote from the tragedy of Macbeth. And it's not to say this is Macbeth set in a rural Irish town and it's just but it uses the trappings of that play, the idea of a man being manipulated and pushed into something by his wife that he maybe doesn't think is the right thing to do, but is told it's for their greater good, and ultimately the consequences that they pay. And I thought she was I thought she was amazing. There's a sequence in this, Adam, I don't know about you, we're two silly boys. There's a sequence in this where an aforementioned dark event is initiated, and his wife Pauline, because they run a pub. A lot of this we've talked already, I know, with Paul. There's a sequence, as I say, where the deed is organised. I don't know about you, Adam. Many a man's fantasy is to take his significant other over a pool table in a wee Irish bar. And I just thought the way that it's shot, the way her performance in that scene, because it's not a sex scene, it's just the build up to it, and how kind of just with the camera work, I thought it was fab. And then there's a sequence that sequence from Macbeth, a lot of people know, like Banquo's ghost. That for me is the standout scene in this film, when you see people, the pressure of lying and the reality of what they've done. I know I'm venturing into spoilerific territory, but that sequence was fantastic. And we haven't even really mentioned our Black Widow, our aforementioned Black Widow. So the basic premise, again, I know Paul kind of talked about this. We have old Henry has suddenly got involved with this younger woman who's known as the widow amongst the community, fantastically played by Kathy Keira Clark from Derry Girls fame, pretty much playing a similar-ish character, just with kind of slightly kind of innuendo-esque overtures I can think of off the top of my head at this time when I'm not tired. And young Henry and his wife Pauline are worried about what this might mean to their legacy, the money that's coming to them. Because you've talked about this, I know about that. I don't know if that's an Irish thing, just as like, well, don't worry, when I go, this is all coming to you, son. This will all be yours one day. Like, okay. But she's fab in this. I mean, there's a sequence where they dream, because she's known as the widow, and it's kind of like how she offed her previous partners. And I just laughed. Maybe it's because it's the sister from Derry Girls, and maybe that actress Kathy will never be able to get away, I guess, from comparisons to that role. But it's a sequence just where she's standing right behind someone, shoots someone, he falls, and it's just, she has such an expression. She's really good at giving expression with her face. Such a silly thing to say. But I guess it's born. We're both really like this, and we're both waxing lyrical about it. Really impressive film. I said it to him after the interview, Paul, you need to make more films. You know, it's great that you're a producer, and he's produced some great things over the last few years, but I think he is a great filmmaker, and yeah, I really like Dead Man's Money. I didn't know what to expect going in, but that's the beauty of the Belfast Film Festival. So that's our two big interviews. Generally, Adam, at this stage, looking through this year's programme as we bring the pod to a close, what are the movies, events that has caught your eye that little Adam, in his little Beetlejuice costume, or maybe not Beetlejuice now that Halloween's over, will be walking into Belfast and getting his paying his admission to go see?
I think the first film that caught my eye, and it's bad to say that it's an international movie, but the first film that caught my eye as soon as the program was announced was A Real Pain, the Jesse Eisenberg directed, starring, writing, with Kieran Culkin. I think I'm such a big Succession fan that anything Kieran Culkin does post Succession, I'm there for. And then to learn that Eisenberg was the director as well, it feels very much like I don't know, like Two Grumpy Men mixed with Before Sunrise, and with a tinge of like Darjeeling Limited. It just looks like a funny movie. I enjoy that sort of neurotic, people that hate each other humor, in my movies. So I'll definitely be checking out A Real Pain. Also be checking out a local documentary called The Housewives of the Year, sort of because it reminded me of the Lovely Ladies competition from Father Ted. So I was really like, oh, that's good. But I love a documentary that's about something that's niche and, you know, is definitely going to have a bit of humor to it, because it's such a ridiculous idea, but it's so Irish that how can it not be good? And then there's a Spanish rom-com called The Other Way Around, that's taken my fancy. It's about a couple that's been together for like 14 years, and they're trying to separate and still be friends, which I just think is a great concept. I love that sort of, you know, it's like when Harry met Sally in reverse. You know, it's, can these two people still be friendly even though they've been through so much? And I think there's potential there for greatness. And then just the William Friedkin accent, the William Friedkin retrospective throughout the whole festival. One of my favorite movies of his is To Live and Die in LA, so I'll definitely be there for that.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, that's at the Beanbag Cinema. There's quite a few. The French Connection, because that was on my list. The Friedkin retrospective, and we also have The Hunted as well. I think is the third film as part of that retrospective. Amazing filmmaker that I think people too often now just associate with The Exorcist, but you forget he has an amazing back catalogue of films. The French Connection I adore. And even The French Connection 2, although I don't think Friedkin directed The French Connection 2. No, he didn't. No, The French Connection 2 has a bit of a terrible ending. From memory, it just kind of, I think he shoots at a boat and it ends, and you're like, all right, we can all go home now. But The French Connection, just for that car chase, and I know it's, I'm repeating previous points that other film critics, other filmmakers have made, it's just such an impressive piece of filmmaking, of cinema, that car chase sequence within the French Connection to Live and Die in LA is one I've never seen on a big screen, so I'm intrigued to see that at the Beanbag Cinema. I love the Beanbag Cinema. It's where Banterflix and the Dark Ages started out, and I'll always have a soft spot for that venue. I know it's a smaller venue, but it's more intimate. It's a great setup technically. I would recommend seeking it out. In terms of other films, you've mentioned already a few I had signposted for myself. But Night Bitch, I know it's an international feature about Amy Adams thinking she's turning into a dog/werewolf. What's not to like about that? And as I said, the TV show just gives me the opportunity to say Night Bitch, which I just like the name. Rumours as we come into the US election has definitely caught my interest. Really star-studded cast. Cate Blanchett is front and centre in that. The central idea being world leaders have gathered together for a summit and all hell starts to break loose. There may be a zombie or zombie-esque outbreak, or there's a world disorder, world chaos is descending, and these leaders, these global leaders, have to work together to survive. But are they that intelligent? I don't know. Have you seen the trailer for this, Adam?
I have, and it looks a lot of fun. And the fact that it's on the day of the actual US election,
yeah,
might make for an interesting viewing.
This is a great choice by the programmers. You'd almost think they knew what they were doing when they programmed this, but I said in the TV show, the trailer makes me think it's either going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be brilliant or it's going to be a mess. It's going to be like that Bill Murray zombie movie from a couple of years ago where the trailer looked great, but the final film was, I don't know if I've enjoyed what I've just watched. I think is that Jesse Eisenberg in that as well?
No, that was a Jim Jarmusch. It was The Dead Don't Die with Bill Murray and Adam Driver.
Adam Driver, there we go. Jesse Eisenberg and Adam Driver, always getting mixed up, those two. Every time they're out, they're going, no, sorry, mate, I'm Adam Driver, no matter what Jim McClane says. But those are the kind of choices for me. And if I wanted to leave talking about a local film, I know it is screened out. They might put on a second screening. The Unholy Lands with our very own Jimmy Nesbitt on the 6th of November, 6 p.m. I know Leo McGuigan had said he'd been sent a screener of the film. He said it's absolutely fantastic. This idea of in the Holy Lands, a party, residents, all chaos possibly breaking loose. He really enjoyed it, this idea of just a group of people gathering together for one last house party. I've heard only good things about it. Hopefully, maybe try and see if we can get the filmmakers onto a future pod and hopefully get to review the title soon. I like our Jimmy. I like Jimmy Nesbitt when he's on screen. I grew up. I'm a boy of a certain age. I grew up with Cold Feet. You looking forward to this?
Yeah, as a fan of his work with the Yellow Pages, I think. Yeah, I've seen the trailer. It looks a lot of fun. Having a super bad Project X type movie set in the Holy Lands is sort of weird that it's never been done before. But I suppose that's the point we're at in Northern Ireland as filmmakers, that we have this new generation growing up that are able to tell these stories. Like, how many house parties were we at, Jim, in the Holy Lands?
We'll not talk about that. We'll not pull on that thread. But you make an interesting point. We are seeing post-conflict, post-Troubles filmmakers now growing up where their reference points aren't necessarily the Troubles. And I shouldn't say that in jest, but they're filmmakers growing up where their reference points is the likes of Superbad, etc. So why not tell their stories with a Northern Irish twang from the filmmakers, from the films that have inspired them, the films they grew up? Yeah, I mean, we can't all be inspired from Star Wars in the 1970s. New filmmakers and new reference points are going to emerge. So yeah, I think that's a great point you make.
Hello, a Belfast Star Wars.
Oh, mate. Luke, I'm your father, son.
Deep blue.
We knew we'd get a reference in there somewhere.
Uncle Andy as your luck in the heart of the force is disturbing, Deep blue.
Oh, Adam, I'm so tired. I can't even fight the giggles. But yeah, I've heard only good things about this. As I say, I'm a big fan of Jimmy Nesbitt. I loved him. There's a film I absolutely loved from many years ago. Not a lot of people have seen The Way, written and directed by Emilio Estevez, and Jimmy Nesbitt just pops up halfway through that film, and he's just like the injection of energy that film needs. And yeah, as I say, I grew up with Cold Feet. So that's some of the films that, for me anyway, from having a quick look through the programme. Other things, of course, we should give a shout out to. Of course, there's the shorts showcase that you should check out. There's a massive array of shorts within this year's programme. And as Adam, you mentioned way at the start, those shorts nights are a massive way to network as well as filmmakers. In the same way, like Film Devar, the Black Box, networking opportunities for filmmakers. That's what they are designed for. And the film festival, it is not just, Adam, as you said earlier, just putting films on, people coming and watching them, going them home. It's about influence and bringing together filmmakers so that they can collab on their next project. So yeah, film festival, I look forward to its return. Last year I didn't get to as much of it as I would have wanted. I'm hoping to get to a lot within this year's programme, and I know that the festival have kindly given us official press status, so we will be swatting the common cinema goer aside with our press badge as we walk through the screenings. Excuse me, I'm official press. Boof, 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 get out of my way. It's Banterflix. We are here to watch the movie. But I'm genuinely excited. Belfast Film Festival. It's like Christmas for Belfast movie lovers. Great mix of talent. Great mix of guests. A lot of guests coming. You've already heard from two of them on this week's pod. And yeah, so I guess that pretty much brings this pod to a close. I'm going to go into a darkened room now and sleep. Adam, it's been fab having you on this pod. We recorded this morning by Zoom because, as I say, we just couldn't get into the studio this morning. Hopefully next week, when our 99 retrospective begins, when we start talking about Deep Blue Sea, we'll be in the studio, and hopefully, Adam, there'll be no sharks.
Or parrots.
Well, maybe Pirates of the Caribbean kind of Johnny Depp. Actually, I don't know, Adam, did you know? But Uncle Andy actually tried out for the role of Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean.
And this is how that went. Billy, whenever I go in the moonlight, I'm a skeleton, Billy.
Trust us, I think 2025 is going to be the year we're going to make Uncle Andy great again. So, yes, that's all from us. So, Adam, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jim.
As I say, hopefully when we restart our 99 retrospective next week, we will be in a nice warm studio free from sharks as we go back to the greatest year of cinema, ? And yeah, all that's left for me to do is very shamelessly sell our wares. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Maybe leave us a nice review wherever you get your podcasting fix, because that helps the algorithm. If you want to go back and find our previous back catalogue, they'll be wherever you get your podcasting fix. But also you can check YouTube. They're all there, along with our TV show and other bits and bobs that we do. And I don't have to sell the Dark Ages because that is over and done with for another year. But I am going to tease, keep an eye on our socials, because we may be doing a Christmas fundraising quiz for the festival in December. Why would we do a Christmas quiz in any other month? I don't know. But keep an eye on that. So yeah, thank you very much. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.